Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you did not know, my name is Robin and I am a queer book channel, and today we will be going through my favourite books of 2023. And this is sort of a part two because I like to do a mid-year wrap-up because I would end up with an hour-long video to talk about because I love reading. I'm quite good at understanding my own tastes as well when it comes to books, so there isn't usually a lot of bad books that I read, but there are usually a great deal of really fantastic books that I read throughout the year. So if you would like to see my favourite books of the first half of the year, then the video is here. The back end of this year has actually been one of my favourite years of reading. I have read some really fantastic, really incredible books, and I genuinely, my mind is blown because I feel like 2023 was really the year for really good literature. Let me dive into the ones that I absolutely loved. So the first one I want to talk about is Eyes, Guts, Throat, Bones. I believe that's the way that it goes. And this is a collection of short stories, all completely different genres. The only thing that they have in common is that a gay woman or queer woman is the forefront of the stories. The stories don't necessarily centre around her queerness, and it's a really incredible, really fantastic showing of writing from the author. I can't really talk about these stories without giving them away because they are short story collection, but you have everything included in this short story collection, from like comedy, you have some really emotional ones that made me cry a little bit and really stick with me to this day. You have love, you have loss, you have supernatural beings, you have the apocalypse, like you have everything you could ever want from stories in this book. And I think it's a really incredible showcasing of writing. I think it's a really fantastic collection of short stories, and I absolutely adored listening to this collection because it was really incredible. The cover is one of my favourite covers of all time, from a book of all time. It's genuinely stunning. So I kind of think I want a physical edition of this book just because it's beautiful, and also I absolutely adored it. So I might go get one. The second book I really enjoyed is actually a bit different for me, and I really enjoyed Killing Jericho. This story follows Jericho, who is an ex-police detective, but he ends up going to prison for some time because he beats up someone he was interviewing, and so he doesn't have a detective job anymore, but he's a very incredible detective. And so after he comes out of prison, he gets into this like slump, like this depression slump, and then this murder happens that is deeply connected with his own history and his own traveller's history, and he just can't help but investigate it. It's a really incredible detective novel, and I don't usually like a detective whodunit novel. I used to way back in the day, but it just really isn't my style anymore. But this really surprised me. I absolutely love Jericho as a character. It's a little more gory than I was expecting it to be. There are some like on the edge of your seat moments, and I really enjoyed the bad guy, the end conclusion of it all, and also it's coming out with a sequel as well, so I will definitely be investing in the sequel because yeah, I just absolutely fucking love this, and I didn't expect to, and I think that's why I rated it so highly. I was just expecting it to be a 3-star Andy for me, but I'm really happy it defied expectations because sometimes you need something a little bit different just to palate cleanse you, and it definitely did that for me. The next one I want to talk about, and I'm gonna cry because I absolutely adored this book. I mean, I adored all of these books, that's why the list is together. But the next one I want to talk about is Carol. As somebody who watches the movie every single year, this was my year that I was like, do you know what? I'm going to consume the audiobook as well because it's my time. It's time that I have read this book because I love the movie. Cate Blanchett is a gay woman in it. Like, who would not love this movie? It's stunning. I will not scream about this movie every single Christmas. So when I consumed this audiobook, I heard a lot of very mixed opinions about this book. A lot of people didn't like how long it was and how a lot of nothing goes on basically in that time span. This book follows Therese, who works at a toy store just for Christmas, and she comes across this woman called Carol, and she is suddenly bewildered by Carol and she doesn't know why. So she sells Carol some toys for her daughter, and then as Carol walks away, Therese just thinks, I have to contact this woman again, I have to talk to this woman again. I would say you definitely could not do this now, and it was definitely questionable in the book that she did this, but Carol wanted her toys sending to her address, and so Therese takes the address and is like, I'm just gonna write her a card, and sends it, and I'm like, it's a little stalker behaviour, but we will let you get away with it for now because it was just a card and it's not signed from her, it's signed from the store. So Carol then rings and asks if she would like to go out for lunch, and then things start to spiral from there. They spend a lot of time at each other's houses, and then Carol sort of drops this bombshell of, I'm getting divorced and he's trying to take my child away from me, and I think I want to run away and just get away from everything right now because it's all too much. Therese dumps her boyfriend, who she didn't like anyway, but she is meant to be going to Europe with, and is like, no, I'm okay, thanks. And dumps all of her life to go with Cate Blanchett on a road trip across America, which I totally understand you, Therese. I believe you. I would do it the exact same thing. Like, I understand. And they're on this road trip, a lot of things happen, and the, real life ends up catching up with them, and it's a heartbreaking book. It has a really emotional ending, and it's an absolutely stunning book, and I understand that a lot of people didn't like it because the road trip is the main part of the book and not a lot happens in this road trip. But I disagree. Like, I love a book where the characters don't really do anything, we just get to see them interact with each other. It's sort of like one of my favourite genres of book. I don't know what genre you would call it, of just like characters talking to each other for, 400 pages, but I absolutely adored their relationship together. And Carol is quite mean in the book compared to the movie, but like, with the amount of shit that Carol goes through, I can kind of understand why she behaves in this way. And a lot of people didn't like Carol in the book. I just had sympathy for her, and I could just see Cate Blanchett's face, and I was like, the amount of shit I would put up with if Cate Blanchett was saying this to me, fine. I'd take it, I'd just take it. But this is a perfect Christmas book for me, and I really enjoyed reading it, and I'm so glad I got around to reading it, just because it has always been on my list like every Christmas that I've been like, I should read it this year. So I'm very glad that I did read it. The next book I want to talk about is Small Worlds by Caleb Azuma Nelson. His first book, his debut book, Open Water, was one of my favourite books of last year or the year before, I can't remember when it came out. It was absolutely incredible. This absolutely lived up to the hype of the first book because this was really, really incredible. In this book, we follow the main character, Stephen, and we sort of just follow him through life and through relationships and through changes and how relationships blossom, grow, and losing loved ones, and like just his grief alongside that. It's a really incredible look into a person's life. The really great thing about Caleb Azuma's writing is just how beautifully written everything is. Everything just comes off as poetry. Everything just gets intertwined with music, and there's almost like a rhythm to the book. There's almost like this soundtrack to the book, and it happened with the first one, and I didn't think that he would be able to replicate it or we'd have that same sort of feeling. But I absolutely feel that through this book as well. It is genuinely, genuinely reading his books is a different experience to reading anybody else's writing, which it seems like such a high compliment, but like he pulls it off so incredibly well. Now we see Stephen go to Ghana and reconnect with his roots, and we also see his life in London, and we just see him as a person grow and change, and it's just a really incredible book and a really good look into someone's life. This one's a very short read as well, so if you were looking for a short read just to get you by, I would definitely suggest both of this book or Open Water, because Open Water is absolutely incredible as well. I will never not read this man's stuff because how incredible of a writer. It's just mind-blowing to me. The next one I've made a video about, so I may not spend too long on it, but that is The Haunting of Hill House. I read this and did the Is the Haunting of Hill House queer video. I will say it's a little bit gay, but if you have not watched that video and you have not heard about this book since the 1950s, this book follows 4 people who are trying to prove, or for science, go into a haunted house and sort of prove that ghosts is real, and everything just goes south from there. This book is I would say like a cornerstone in horror books and just horror in general. It's just the inspiration that keeps on giving. It's a classic and it's still feeding into today's society and its effects it's had on literature and films, and everything today is genuinely insane. And it was one of my favourite books I read this year, and I'm really glad that I got around to reading it because it's been on my list for a long time now, but I really enjoyed this book. So if you have not read it yet, it's definitely your sign to read this. Okay, the next one you might be able to tell is my favourite book because I'm literally wearing the t-shirt of it now. I did find myself a Brainwryms t-shirt. Cypher Press, who prints Alison Rumford books, are selling Brainwryms t-shirts, and so I definitely had to get myself one. But that leads me on to the next book I absolutely adored this year, and that of course is Brainwryms by Alison Rumford. Getting to meet Alison Rumford was genuinely like a highlight of the year as well, so that was super exciting. I will always love Alison Rumford's work. I think she is a fantastic horror writer. And as I said, and I don't think this is too high of praise, but I think she is changing horror in like even in today's modern standards. I think that what she is doing is different, it is fantastic, it's just pushing the boundaries, it's vile, it's grim, and it's just really fantastic. And I cannot sing Alison Rumford's praises enough. In this book we follow Frankie and Vanya. Frankie is in a terrorist attack at the place she works. She works at a gender identity clinic, and a TERF has gone out of her way to bomb the place, and Frankie does not cope well with it at all. And in place of this, she goes drinking, she goes out partying, and during this whole time in her life she meets Vanya. She sort of falls madly in love with Vanya, but Vanya's very like a mystery basically. And that's sort of the only thing I can tell you without giving away how vile and disgusting this book is. We get to find out a lot about both characters, and in this book, transphobia is literal brainworms, hence the title. Transphobia manifests as this physical being of literal brainworms, and so we get to see that in play. It is very gross. And we get to see discussions on kink and class, and there's a lot of things that happen in this book that are a very big and interesting talking point. It's a lot, it's definitely a lot, and even at one point there's a page where Alison Rumford like fourth wall breaks and is like, are you sure you want to carry on reading this? I'm just letting you know that the next chapter is horrid, so I'm just letting you know that just in case. This one's not for the light-hearted. It is extremely disgusting, but it is a really fantastic and incredible piece of work, and I will always love anything that Alison Rumford ever brings out because she's very fucking talented. So these two are sort of like in the same genre, I guess, but one of my favourite books I read this year is ISDAL, or ISDAL, I believe. This book is a conversation around the ethics of true crime series and true crime podcasts. This book connects with another book that is on this list, so I put those two together for that reason. But this book does it in a completely different way. This book is split into 3 parts, and the first part is 2 presenters of a true crime show who are trying to work out what happened in a murder. It's really gross insight to what they talk about and things that they cut out of the episode and how they go around obtaining information about the murder, and it's vile, it's gross. But the main takeaway from this book is how we talk about female victims and the sexiness of murders and the final victim, and how we portray these women in true crime podcasts and the ethics around that. It's a really incredible read, and it's very short, as in the pages sort of look like this, all the way through. So I think I got through it in about half an hour. I think it's really, really interesting. And so this definitely made it to my top favourites of the year. The rest of the books in this video are standout books for me and, you know, the top of the pile. But these two are my hands down favourite book of 2023. And so the first one we have is Penance. And as you can tell, as I said, these two are in the same sort of genre. Penance is a book that looks into the bias of true crime podcasts and true crime writers, and how they will never get all the facts completely straight, and the ethics of true crime as well. And this is, I think, one of the most incredible books I have ever read. I have never read such a well-written, I'm speechless. This book is written incredibly well, and I will never stop singing its praises. I think it's one of my favourite books of all time. This book follows an ex-journalist who is now a true crime writer, and he is really interested in this case in the UK, which is like happens in a made-up seaside town, but this really horrific murder. And this whole book is the true crime author's perspective on what happened in the murder. But we get to find out that he is a very shady person. During this book, we start to realise if the author of this is really someone who has trustworthy advice or evidence. At the beginning of the book, we are greeted with a page that just says, "This is an examination of the 2016 murder of a teenage girl, Joan Wilson, by 3 girls attending the same school. It was written by journalist Alex Z. Corelli and first published on March 2022. Shortly after publication, several of Corelli's interviewees publicly accused Corelli of misinterpreting and even fabricating some of the content of their interviews. Following these accusations, it was discovered that therapeutic writing produced by 2 of the 3 offenders while incarcerated was illegally acquired by Corelli." And there is a whole thing about how this book shouldn't be trustworthy at the very beginning of the page. And then we go into this book and it's almost like we forget that first page because we begin to trust him and his writing because it seems so realistic as he recounts the murders, as he recounts everything that happens. And then we get towards the end of the book, in the middle of the book, and we start to question, how does he know that this happened? Because nobody else knows it. He fabricates things and it comes from a very biased source, and we have no idea what's true and what's not. And therefore, this is the questioning of whether true crime is really ethical at all, and the thing it puts the families through and everything. I absolutely adore Eliza Clark, and I'm so glad that it was her year this year. Weirdly enough, I read Boy Parts, and a week later I was scrolling through my library app and it was like, new from Eliza Clark. And so it was like the same week that this was published, so, you know, the moons aligned on this one. I actually consumed this via audiobook and then got this after the fact, and I did get a signed edition, which is very exciting. But I'm very excited to see what Eliza Clark does in the future because this was absolutely mind-blowing. So this book is the late contender, and why I haven't filmed this video any sooner, because this is, again, one of my favourite books of 2023. This is in my top 2 favourite books. So alongside Penance, I read Bellies, and this was absolutely fantastic. This book follows 2 people in a relationship, Tom and Ming. We see them as they get together and how the relationship worked beforehand when they start going out, and then Ming comes out as trans, and so we see that journey and then the relationship with each other after the relationship and how they sort of reconnect towards the end. It's a really incredible book about love, loss, friendship. It's relationships, growing as your own person, and it's really, really incredible. It's really, I don't know, it was very moving. I cried a little bit towards the end. It just is one of my favourite books, again, of 2023, but maybe of all time. I can't really give you much more than that. This book is just a book that, you know, not a lot happens, but we get to see these people grow and move as people, and it's a really incredible, fantastic book, and it's written beautifully. I love the characters in this. I love every single one of the characters, no matter flawed or anything. I think this was just an absolutely beautifully written book. I believe that this is a debut book as well, and just, yeah. It was absolutely incredible. Again, I consumed this via audiobook, but my sister got me a signed version for Christmas. Audiobook is really incredible. Both people that play Tom and Ming in the audiobook are really good, and really sell it as like a real story. It's one of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to as well. But yeah, this is a really incredible book, and that has topped off my 2023 list. Let me know if you guys have read any of these, if you're interested in any of these. This has been such a fantastic year for reading for me, and I think now having a couple of years of, you know, making content about reading books and, you know, reading 60 plus books a year, I think I'm starting to understand what I personally like in reading and what to look out for. And so I've not had a lot of misses this year, but I have had so many fantastic books. A lot of these came out in 2023 as well, which it's just a fantastic year for literature and a fantastic year for me reading wise. I genuinely adored every book on this list. These two that just have a special place in my heart forever, because I just I can't get over how fantastic these books are at all. They're just really incredible and genuinely changed my world for reading. And so yeah, only light praise here, of course. I hope you have a fantastic new year, and thank you so much for watching this video. If you like my content, like, comment, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. And I shall see you next time. Bye!